Today we're going back to 1861, to a tobacco plantation in Virginia, right on the edge of the Civil War. This is the story of an enslaved woman named Meline. She was a mother who was forced into a series of just impossible choices to protect her 3 children. It's a really tough look at survival, at sacrifice, and the true, very complicated cost of freedom.
Wow. I mean, that single sentence really just hits you, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the brutal deal at the center of Moline's life. This wasn't some one-time payment. No, this was a daily, grinding cost that she paid for years, all just to keep her family from being ripped apart. This really sets the stage for everything that comes next.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We are on the Beaumont Plantation in Hanover County, Virginia. The year is 1861. The owner is a widower, Garrett Beaumont, and the air is just thick with talk of war. Now, for Meline, this plantation is her entire world, and Beaumont, he is its absolute ruler.
And you have to understand this brutal legal reality. Under Virginia law back then, Meline and her kids weren't even seen as people. They were property. Beaumont could sell a child away from his or her mother with just a simple signature. And there was no court you could go to, no appeal. The only protection a mother had was whatever leverage she could somehow create for herself.
So what was that leverage? Well, it came in the form of what the source calls the arrangement. For 6 long years, Meline was called to Beaumont's bedroom every single night, and in exchange for her submission, he gave her his word that he would never sell their children away from the plantation. That was it. That was the only shield she had.
And the cost of that shield was just immense, a price she paid every single day. That nightly walk to the main house, the judgment she must have felt from others, and the internal trauma she just had to bury deep down to survive. And from this horrific arrangement came 3 children, Josephine, Samuel, and Clara, whose entire lives were tied to this fragile, unspoken promise.
But you know that any kind of fragile security built on a foundation like that can't last. The start of the Civil War brought financial trouble and chaos, and for a man like Garrett Beaumont, a promise he made to an enslaved woman, well, that was the first thing he was willing to throw away.
And with these cruel, dismissive words, Beaumont shatters his 6-year promise. He tells Meline he's gotten an offer for their son, Samuel, to be sold to a plantation down in Alabama, a place that was basically known as a death sentence for enslaved children. All her sacrifice, just dismissed in an instant.
And just like that, a terrifying clock starts ticking. Melina has only 7 days until the buyer arrives from Alabama to inspect and then purchase her son. The clock is ticking and the pressure is unbelievable.
But in this moment of pure desperation, she finds an ally. Old Harriet, the house cook, offers her a way out. And it's not just a contact for the Underground Railroad, it's a way to buy time. She gives Meline a potion that won't kill Beaumont, but will make him sick enough to postpone the sale, creating the opening they need to run.
And this brings us to a really stark question. I mean, think about it. For 6 years, Meline had endured. She had submitted. But now, she was being asked to act, to cross a line she had never, ever crossed before. What would you do in her shoes?
Meline makes her choice. She poisons Beaumont's brandy, and both he and the buyer fall violently ill. She got her delay. And now begins the desperate, harrowing flight to freedom with 3 young children following close behind.
So here was the plan that Harriet laid out. A few simple steps leading to a meeting with a man named Solomon. But as you can probably guess, in a situation this desperate, plans very rarely go smoothly. The plan just falls apart. While she's carrying a tray to Beaumont's room, Meline overhears him and the overseer. They suspect her. They know it was poison, and they're planning to interrogate her at dawn. She can't wait for the new moon. She has to run now, taking her children straight into a dangerous swamp in the middle of the night.
So there they are, hiding in a hollow cypress tree, when her 5-year-old daughter, Josephine, asks this incredibly simple question: what's free? And Moline's answer is just so profound. It's not some abstract political concept. It's the absence of pain. It's the end of being owned. It's the ability to simply belong to yourself. And then comes the ultimate test. She hears the barking of the search party's dogs, and they're getting closer. She makes a completely unthinkable choice. She kisses her children, tells them to stay hidden, and she runs south, right towards the dogs, to draw the hunters away from them.
She's captured. She's interrogated, beaten, that she doesn't tell them a thing.
Beaumont sentences her to be hanged at dawn. And yet, sitting in that smokehouse, Meline actually smiles. Because in her mind, she's already won. She has paid the final price, and her children are free.
But then, history itself just crashes the party. As the noose is tightened around her neck, a group of Confederate soldiers rides onto the plantation. They are rounding up every able-bodied man for the war, and that includes Beaumont and his overseers. And in all the chaos that follows, Meline is just forgotten, left standing there on the platform.
The escape is one thing, but what happens after is a totally different story. This was not a simple, happy ending. Freedom, as Melina was about to find out, came with its own set of burdens and its own profound cost. So that night, Meline slips away again. With help from the Underground Railroad, she is eventually reunited with her children weeks later in Pennsylvania. But even there, they aren't totally safe from slave catchers. Their journey only really ends when they finally cross the border into Canada, finally and truly free.
And this slide really gets at something important. We have this idea of freedom, like it's a finish line where all the suffering just stops. But the reality for Meline and her children was that it was the start of a whole new struggle. It meant finally having to confront the trauma she had pushed down for years, dealing with nightmares, and just learning how to live in a world where they were no longer somebody's property.
So was her incredible sacrifice worth it? Well, just look at what her children became. Josephine, the little girl who walked through that swamp, she grew up to be a teacher. Samuel, the boy who was almost sold away, he became a celebrated artist. And little Clara? She became one of the first black women doctors in Ontario. This was Moline's legacy.
Years later, long after she had passed away, her children found a letter she had written. And in it, she summed up the philosophy that guided her through all that unimaginable horror. She didn't regret the price she paid, because it was a price paid for love.
And that leaves us with this final, lingering question. Meline's story was thankfully recorded, but she was one of millions. How many other women made these same impossible choices, paid these same terrible prices, and their names, their sacrifices, have just been lost to time? Their legacy lives on, maybe not in books, but in all the descendants who walk free today because of them.